This is Leader Time by FedNet for February 5, 2025. Thank you for joining us. Listen along for remarks by Senate Majority Leader John Thune and Democratic Leader Chuck Schumer on the floor. Thune discussed the nomination of Russell Vought to serve a second stint as President Trump's budget director, the pace of cabinet nominations, and legislative priorities. The following material is protected by copyright.
Mr. President, tomorrow the Senate will be voting on the nomination of Russell Vought to be Director of the Office of Management and Budget. I could talk about the extensive policy experience that has helped prepare him for this position. But Mr. Vought has an even bigger qualification for this position, and that is the fact that he's already held it. That's right. Mr. Vought has already served as Director of the Office of Management and Budget in President Trump's first administration. And so there's no question that he will be able to hit the ground running. Mr. President, as Director of OMB, Mr. Vought will have the chance to address two key economic issues: cutting burdensome government regulations and addressing excessive spending. Government regulation has a direct effect not only on our economy, but on Americans' pocketbooks. Regulations can drive up Americans' energy bills. They can drive up the cost of housing, of a new car, of appliances. The list goes on and on. And the history of the past 4 years under the Biden administration is a history of burdensome new regulations. Republicans are determined to alleviate that regulatory burden for the sake of economic growth and to improve the lives of hardworking Americans. And I know that Mr. Vought will make getting rid of burdensome regulations a priority. I know that Mr. Vought is already also committed, I should say, to addressing our spending problems. Our country is currently on a dangerous spending track, with debt held by the public set to hit a staggering $52 trillion by 2035. That, Mr. President, is not sustainable. And identifying ways to rein in our spending and to target government waste has to be a priority. And I'm confident that Mr. Vought will help lead that charge. Mr. President, one of my top priorities for the Senate at the beginning of this year was processing President Trump's nominees. I'm very pleased to say that Mr. Vought's confirmation will bring the total number of nominees confirmed since the inauguration to 13. That's roughly twice as fast as nominees were confirmed at the start of the two previous administrations. The Senate will take up additional nominees next week, and we will work and will maintain an aggressive pace to get the President's full team in place as soon as possible. Mr. President, while our focus in the Senate has been on nominees, we've managed to work in votes on a few pieces of legislation. And last week, the President signed one of those pieces of legislation into law. The Laken-Riley Act, which the President signed last Wednesday, is Congress' first installment in our work to combat illegal immigration. It is not, of course, a comprehensive bill, but it will ensure that illegal immigrants who steal, assault a law enforcement officer, or kill or seriously injure another person are detained by Immigration and Customs Enforcement instead of being allowed back out on the street. Had such a law been in place last year, it is possible that Laken-Riley would still be alive today. And I'm thankful that we were finally able to pass this important legislation. Mr. President, the Laken-Riley Act joins the work the Trump administration has been doing to keep dangerous illegal immigrants off our streets. Since President Trump's inauguration, his border czar and now Homeland Security team, now led by Secretary Noem, have been working around the clock to take murderers, rapists, gang members, and other dangerous criminals into custody in preparation for being deported. Reading lists of crimes these individuals committed is horrifying, and it is incredible that they have been allowed to remain in our country. And I'm grateful that we now have a president who is serious about protecting Americans from criminal aliens. Republicans in Congress are working on legislation to support the president's efforts, and we will ensure that the president has the manpower and detention space needed to detain and deport individuals who threaten the safety of our streets. Mr. President, it's been a busy few weeks here in the Senate. I'm looking forward to more as we continue to confirm the president's nominees and deliver on an agenda for the American people. Mr. President, I yield the floor and I suggest the absence of quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Schumer took his leader time to rail against the Department of Government Efficiency, the Vought nomination, federal funding in the Trump administration, and Kash Patel's nomination to lead the FBI.
Now, Mr. President, Yesterday, Leader Jeffries and I announced legislation to stop unlawful meddling by DOJ or other entities in the Treasury Department's payment system. Our bill will deny access to the payment system by anyone designated as a, quote, special government employee. In other words, people who aren't required to disclose conflicts of interest. Our bill will deny access to anyone with conflicts of interest or lack of appropriate clearance. Imagine where all the federal funds are going out and someone has a conflict of interest and has access to those funds and can do something with them. That's a formula for waste. That's a formula that makes sure that money isn't spent wisely, but is spent to accommodate the needs of a special few. And our bill will ensure that Treasury payments can only be accessed by those with proper clearance. Everyone should agree that making the government more efficient and more effective is a good thing. But DOJ's scorched earth policies are dangerous and unlawful. That's their approach. History shows that when this kind of stuff is done in the dark of night with no guardrails by a limited group of people who don't really know the programs they're dealing with, it leads to bad results. If Treasury payments were ever intentionally or even accidentally halted or manipulated, it could paralyze the economy. And DOJ has said they want to cut $2 trillion, $2.5 trillion from the budget. Well, that's going to be massive cuts, done again by people who don't know the programs, don't know the whole extent of what the government is doing. Some of it might be wasteful, get rid of it. But much of it is good and needed. One mistake, and people's Social Security benefits could freeze. One mistake, and disability payments to veterans, loans to small businesses could all be endangered. If DOJ's meddling caused us to default, it could compromise the full faith and credit of the United States. And that would hurt everybody, because interest rates would go up on everything. Cars, homes, you name it. The OMB funding freeze last week was disastrous enough, but a DOJ funding freeze would be far worse if guardrails are totally thrown out the window. And that seems to be what's happening. We don't know any guardrails. Sure haven't been made public. We should talk about reform here in the open, in the halls of Congress, in the public forums of the people's government. That's how it's been done by Democrat, Republican, liberal, conservative for centuries. Because we all know, the founding fathers knew, historians know, democracy doesn't work in the shadows. Autocracy does, not democracy. Democracy does not skirt the rule of law. The American people deserve to have a seat at the table when these important decisions are made, but so far, DOJ is operating entirely in the dark. Our legislation would correct it. We're going to do anything and everything we can legislatively to try and get this done. And maybe at some point, we'll get some help from the other side of the aisle if they see how bad DOJ's actions are. OMB and vote. If you want to understand the risk of letting DOJ take over the Treasury Department, all you have to do is look at what happened last week at OMB. OMB unilaterally froze trillions in potential spending and unleashed chaos. That's why today I will join every single Democrat in opposing the nomination of Russell Vought. All 47 Democrats are opposed to Vought's nomination, and we will take the floor early this afternoon and spend the whole night discussing how bad this nomination is, how it badly affects working families. His confirmation would be a disaster for working families and a godsend to billionaires who don't pay their fair share in taxes. And all they want, these billionaires, cut any program. We don't care what they are. We don't care what the consequences are. We don't care how it hurts people, as long as we, the ultra-wealthy, can get a deeper tax break, even though they're doing very well right now. So we will come to the floor and sound the alarm on Russell Vought through the night. We'll expose his ultra-right record as the chief architect of Project 2025. We will expose how he's turning Project 2025 into the White House agenda, Now, when Donald Trump was running for president and 2025 was made public, it was regarded so horrifically by the American people that Donald Trump had to say, I don't know anything about it. But right now, with Vought, who was one of the chief architects of Project 2025, as head of OMB, all of it, much of it, damaging, dangerous for the American people, will be implemented. And that's why Americans do not want Russell Vought, the author of 2025, to head such an all-powerful, all-encompassing agency as OMB. We will still hold firm in standing against Russell Vought because of all the ways he stands against the working people of America. Now on Head Start and the effect of the funding freeze. Even a week after Donald Trump backed off his ill-designed funding freeze, the collateral damage still lingers for millions across the country. He was forced by public pressure, by Senate Democrats and by others, to back off on the funding freeze. But that doesn't mean the harm all went away. It's still being done. And a painful example is the damage done to Head Start programs everywhere. Every single Head Start program was halted last week, despite White House claims that they were exempt. And that's a fact. Just go ask your Head Start program in your state. Does Donald Trump realize what Head Start does? It's child care for kids, it's dental care for kids, it's adult education. Does he realize that most families in America are either single-parent families or families who have two parents but both are working? And if there's no Head Start, the families can get in a panic almost. Who's going to watch the kids? Do I have to take off from work? Will my boss dock me a pay? Will my boss fire me? And how do I get good care for the kids if Head Start isn't working? It's a nightmare for people throughout the middle class in America. And that's why child care is so important. So why then, with that kind of trauma that people would face, that daily worry about how you find child care if Head Start is gone, it's supremely cruel and is going to make life more difficult, more expensive for working families. Now, do you want to know where the idea to eliminate Head Start comes from? Russell Vought and Project 2025. When we're talking about how bad 2025 is, and they say, oh, we just want to get rid of waste. Oh, no. They want to eliminate the whole thing. They explicitly want to eliminate the program altogether. Who cares, they say, what it does to help kids and parents? That's another reason why Democrats will never, never support someone like Russell Vought to lead the OMB. We will all oppose him on the floor and speak about it, as I said, through the night. Even in a week after the funding freeze supposedly ended, I'm still getting calls from Head Start programs throughout New York. They're missing funds, suffering technical issues, or unable to operate at all. And there's no one to answer the phone. You're a Head Start program. You get money every 2 weeks. You got to pay the rent. You got to pay the workers. And you call up and say, I haven't gotten my check. You say the freeze is over. There's no one at the other end of the line. No one to answer it. It's chaos. Cruel chaos. In upstate New York, the Head Start program that serves Cattaraugus and Wyoming counties, very conservative areas, Republican areas, they haven't received funding in over a week and have been forced to temporarily close. 200 kids have lost out on child care from this one incident. Every single staffer has been laid off. This is the handiwork of my fellow Americans, of Russell Vought and Project 2025. Put them at OMB, you're going to see a lot more of this, a lot more damage to average working families. And this is not just happening in New York. It's happening across the country in states like Washington, Michigan, Connecticut, Wisconsin. All this chaos with Head Start is precisely what Russell Vought and Project 2025 want. I am writing to HHS, demanding they take immediate actions to fix problems with Head Start. First, we need HHS to fix the payment system and get the money that is now get out the money that is now overdue. And we need them to do it now. Second, the Trump administration must stop the disruptions and fix every glitch preventing Head Start from accessing funding. And third, we need HHS to stop leaving our child care providers in the dark. They need to explain what went wrong and how they'll fix it and how quickly they'll fix it and when people will getting the dollars that they were promised to pay the rent, to pay the workers, to care for the kids. Finally, FBI. So yesterday, the FBI handed over to the Justice Department a list of thousands of employees involved in the January 6th investigation. These actions have political retribution written all over them, and it'll get worse if Kash Patel is named FBI director. The Senate should not rubber stamp a patently partisan nominee like Kash Patel to lead the FBI. I joined the Senate Democrats on the Judiciary Committee. I am demanding a second hearing of Mr. Patel. He clearly withheld information from senators about plans for political retribution of the FBI. These agents are now on the firing line, but it wasn't known when he first had the hearing that would happen. So he clearly withheld that information from senators. Either Mr. Patel serves the interests of the American people or serves the interests of Donald Trump, which, of course, all too often diverge. I yield the floor and note no, I don't yield the floor. I do yield the floor, but I don't note the absence of a quorum. We have some people here to speak.
Thanks for listening to this FedNet podcast, and be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. This program is copyrighted by Federal Network, Incorporated, and provided only for informational and educational purposes. Unauthorized reproduction, distribution, or use of this episode without expressed written permission from FedNet is prohibited.